This is Future Fork, a show that explores the world of food and the decisions we can make today that will shape our future. On the show, you'll hear from innovators in the food space. We'll have disruptive conversations with people from around the globe who are taking the lead on topics like food sustainability, ending world hunger, food security, and so much more. I'm your host, Paul Newnham. In this episode, we're talking to Dr. Ismahane Elouafi, Executive Managing Director of CGIAR. Dr. Elouafi is an internationally renowned geneticist whose groundbreaking work on crop resilience has transformed food security worldwide. Today, we're diving into the critical role of agricultural research in transforming food systems while facing climate challenges. You'll hear about her journey from Morocco to leading one of the world's premier agricultural research organizations. You'll discover how neglected crops could both revolutionize our approach to food security, and you'll learn why diversity both in our food system and in scientific leadership matters now more than ever. Let's get into it. Ismahane, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's a pleasure to be with you here in the show.
Well, I want to start with a little bit around your journey into the world of science. Let's go back a little bit. Where, why, and how did your passion for science begin?
I think, Paul, it started very early on. When I was studying in my primary journey, secondary journey, I think in Morocco, they staggered, and I think all over the world, maybe now they are doing it a bit earlier, but you get to know math first, and then they bring you physics, and then chemistry, and then biology. And I think for me, it was every time I get to see one of the disciplines, I'm like, wow, this is the one. This is the one that explains it all. So I remember I was really bad with math, and I was in the competitions at Marrakesh level at that time. And then when I got to see physics, it makes a lot of sense. Like I loved it. Same thing with chemistry, where really it's about reactions and pathways. And then when I got into biology and particularly genetics, it was just like a blow-minded moment. Like, this is it. This is that brings all together. The mathematics, the physics, the chemistry, all together. And I got really passionate about it, particularly genetics. Got me drawn in much more than any other subject in biology. And since then, I think learning it's just so much enjoyment. Unfortunately, we are not able to learn as much as when we are kids. And that's why it's good that they are giving us that information at that age.
Were your family supportive of this love for science?
Oh, definitely. My dad was a teacher and then a director of a primary school. So for him, studying was his everyday and his purpose. So he was very pushy on that side that yes, you have to study. It's all about how much you learn. It's all about your grades at school. It was quite complicated. And then my elder sister was very good student. So she was 5 years older than me, and she was really like a go-getter. And she ended up doing physics and electronics and robotics later on in her career. But really, she was a role model, and we all followed her. All the sisters went the same path, more or less.
So as you fast forward, you've had an incredible career. You've had positions such as the chief scientist at the Food and Agriculture Organization, or FAO, which is when we kind of started to engage and interact. You've worked as the Director General of the International Center for Biosaline Agriculture, or ICBA, which is based in the United Arab Emirates. And now you're the Executive Managing Director of the CGIAR, as well as being highly awarded with numerous accolades, with an award being given by the King of Morocco. What are you enjoying about your latest appointment after such a distinguished career?
It's really a privilege and honor to have had the chance and the opportunity to be in those positions. I see it really as an honor, and I see it also as a responsibility, because I'm one of few that did it, but it doesn't mean I'm the brightest. It doesn't mean I'm the only one that can do it. There are other millions, thousands of people that can do it. But I had that privilege to be able to be in those positions. And hence, I have the responsibility to represent the scientists, to represent a woman from the South in that position. And I really enjoyed every one of them. I think really, we talked about it before, Paul. If you don't enjoy it, don't do it sincerely. I mean, we spend so much hours or so much time of our life in work. We need to enjoy it. We need to produce and be delivering, but also there should be an enjoyment component. Otherwise, you wouldn't give all what you have to give. So for me, it's really an honor. And particularly now at CGR, I mean, I loved all my position. The chief scientist at FAO was a great one. And getting to understand the UN and getting to put more spotlight on science in the UN setting was quite difficult, but really enjoyable and very refreshing. And there was a call for it. Even the members were saying, we want to hear more about science. We want to hear more about innovation. We want to hear more about solutions than problems. In the CGR particularly, I find it really wonderful to be in a science-based organization representing almost 10,000 people over almost 80 countries. And given the history of CGR, I find it really wonderful to be the face of it and to talk science and to talk partnership and to talk how could we do it better now that we have spent 50 years? How could we strengthen the nurses? How could we partner better to transform food, land, and water systems as our really mission and vision say it? And that's how I see it from my perspective. ICWA was a great journey with the UAE, and we've met there as well, Paul. It was a small center, but with such a niche area that made it so special. And I think really we did a great work, and ICWA continued to do a great work in terms of salinity understanding and breeding material for saline water.
So you've hinted a little bit. So for listeners that have not heard of what is CGIAR, how would you describe what it is?
So CGR is the largest group of public international agriculture research. So it's the only centers that really give priority to public good, to global international knowledge around food, land, and water systems, covering all spectrum, from plant breeding to animal breeding to fish breeding to water management to policy to management or production system in tropical agriculture, in dry, in different ecosystems. So it is an integrated partnership, as we call it. So we have 13 centers in the group, and every center has a specialty. However, we are all together under the umbrella of one CGR as an integrated partnership. What is known about the CGR is mostly the breeding component, because we are behind 60% of the wheat in the world. The CGR created most of the varieties of the rice, about 50% of the rice in the world. Most of the beans comes from the CGR, the majority of the beans. Same thing with the barley, with the cassava, with chickpea, lentils, and you name it. So different species. Same thing with livestock, be it small ruminants or cattle or fish like tilapia, for example. 90% of the tilapia of the world comes from our center in Malaysia. So that's what we are known for. We are also known for our analysis and modeling through IFPRI, the International Food Policy Research Institute, whereby we have worked with many countries, be it high income, middle, or low, to really analyze their policies and provide them guidance and recommendations on their food policy spectrum, and many more. Of course, on the water side as well, we are quite famous with both the policy side, but also the technical side. So the centers have been, some people might not know the CGR per se, but they would know the center. They would know BARDA, they would know CIMID, they would know IITA, they would know Africa Rice, and so on and so forth. So CGR is the group that started, and now it's bringing it all together under one CGR umbrella. And the why is that because we need, now, unlike in the 60s or the 70s, we need to look at the things at the system level. You can't fix only one species. You have to fix the whole system. And if you change one component, it has a lot of effect on the other variable. So you need to really bring it at system level. And that's why one CGIAR makes a lot of sense today more than.
So that's super helpful. And I think understanding the system level is really critical for us. And it's really critical to understand how you're thinking at a systemic level on the interrelationships as well between the different crops and the different challenges that we're facing from climate and other things. So in these centers, I think you said 13, is that right?
Yes, 30.
So there's 13 centers that are a part of this wider CGIAR. So how do each of them play their own unique role in this food system transformation?
So as I said, we have what we call the one CGR. So on the one CGR, what we are trying to have, it's certain common grounds. So we have a unified governance. We have our global impact that we want to really make sure it's fully coordinated under a very clear framework. And we are trying also to streamline operations. And that streamlining of operation, it's mostly to make it more efficient. It's two aspects to it. Make it more efficient and less costly, of course, but also have it at the highest standards possible. So as a small center or a big center, they should have at least the highest standard, certain levels of standards in different aspects, be it in ethics, be it in research management, be it in research ethics, be it in financial management, and so on and so forth. So every center is still this center, the most important center in that area of expertise. For example, if I take IITA in Nigeria, it's really the leading center in terms of cassava breeding and in terms of all the value chain of cassava, not only the breeding, but also the processing of cassava, the scaling up of the new methodologies of propagating cassava, and so on and so forth. So every center, it's still a house of knowledge. That's how I see it myself, or a lighthouse of knowledge in those areas of collaboration. But together, we are bringing together the crops, the livestock, the water, the policy, all the other aspects, the access to the market, the analysis of the regulation and policies, the engagement of the different partners. So together, we are working with 3,000 partners across the globe. So it's much more impactful when we come together and we look at it at the systemic level and the way nature is doing it. I always like to say it, we need to mimic more nature, and nature is not walls. There is no walls. There is no separation. Everything is seemingly going into the other aspect.
It sounds great. There's obviously a lot of thought gone into how to systematize, but also to create that depth of knowledge on certain, or lighthouses that you are talking about, or houses of knowledge, these kind of spaces which have real depth, because science is about really going deep into certain questions and certain challenges. But then at the same time, looking broad, it's quite complex.
And having the critical mass is very important. So when you look at breeding, when you look at the CGIAR, you look at the number of breeders we have. I don't have the number of breeders we have, but look at climate change and agriculture. We have 600 scientists that are in that spectrum of agriculture and interaction with climate change. So when you look at it this way, and for example, in 2023, we trained 700,000 people. So the critical mass is really very important when you want to make breakthroughs in science, and you want to make a big change or a big, really advancement and progress.
What are some of the biggest challenges you're currently facing? Because the world's obviously quite complicated at the moment, but what's some of the biggest challenges on your radar?
The first and the most really challenge I think we all have, it's really the intertwined nature of all the challenges, particularly climate, inequalities, environment, food insecurity and nutrition insecurity. When you look at all of these, we are all hit by really the fact that the numbers are not looking good. We are not doing well. We have still 350 million people that are affected by extreme hunger, not hunger. The numbers of hunger are in the 800, but extreme hunger, it's still 350 million. And we know that we are in a warming trend. And if we have plus 2 degrees, we're going to have an additional 189 million people that are going to go into hunger. If we have plus 4 degrees, we're going to have 2 billion more. So the numbers are really striking. And the only way forward is that we need to look at the system level, and we need to be bolder, and we need to bring solutions and scale them up. We can't keep really bringing solutions without really paying enough attention to what are the ways and means to make sure it goes to all farmers, particularly those 500 million small-scale farmers that are in the global south and in the least income countries. So, Paul, as we are talking about the challenges, and they are really overwhelming, you know them as well as I do, there is also an opportunity. And for me, the opportunity lies in science. The opportunity is it's to bring what we have right now on the ground. And I think that's the work of international development agencies to scale up, because there isn't enough scale up of most of the basic innovation that we have in the high income countries. You won't find them in the low income countries, and you find them that are way too expensive for the farmers. But there is also a chance to find much better solutions. And that's really, it's in the science and the investment in science. So climate resilient crops, for example, the breed we have right now in the market would not make it with plus 2 degrees. So we have to work ahead of those warming happening or those environmental changes happening so that we have the right system as a whole, the variety and the practices with it. And there, I think there's a huge potential in the CGR, not only because of what we have done in the last 50 years, but also because we are custodians of the gene banks. So we have huge collections for any species you can think of. And in those gene banks, we have the genes that will allow us to have much more heat-tolerant varieties or drought-tolerant varieties, or a higher way to sequester carbon in those species and increase, of course, yield and diseases. So there's a number of genes there that will allow us really to have the species that we need for tomorrow. And we need to do it. That's where the opportunity is. And I hope really that everybody see it, because you could see it in any sector, in energy, in health, in different sectors. So we need to invest more in the solution, and we need to invest more in agriculture particularly, because agriculture, it's the only one that can do both mitigation and adaptation. So you are adapting to the environment and you have co-benefit mitigation impact. And it's again the only sector that can clean up the air and that can sequester carbon. There is no other sector that does it. It's only soils, it's only plants and oceans that can really sequester. And those are the ecosystem where our food, land, and water systems are, and where our agriculture sector is.
Yeah, I mean, these opportunities are so critical, and it's so important in a world that's faced with these challenges to have hope. And I guess science provides that hope. It provides the opportunity for us to adapt and mitigate concurrently, and agriculture is critical for that. It's so important that we keep that in mind as we're understanding conversations around investments and even development aid and assistance and all of these things, which are hotly debated at the moment.
Absolutely, Paul. And that's why it doesn't make sense that agriculture is getting only 3% of climate finance. So if you have a sector that could be a solution, not only reduce their own emission, but other sector emission, how could you only invest 3% in it?
No, absolutely. And we need to advocate and really shift that so that it's much more balanced in terms of the investment. So coming up is CGIAR Science Week, which is a week where you're gathering together. Tell us a little bit about what is it and why is it so important at this time to be bringing scientists together in this way?
So I think, Paul, I would like really the Science Week to be a global gathering. And we are doing it over the week, as you know, from 7 to 12 April. And we want a really a global gathering of our top scientists, policymakers, advocates. And we want to really focus on the solutions, focus on the innovation, focus on how could we scale up all these solutions and how could we bring up new solutions given the great advancement of science that we have seen in the last 10 years. And even just recently on quantum computing, for example. So for us, we're going to launch our new portfolio. It's a 2025 to 2030 research portfolio. that is at the heart of tackling food, climate, and biodiversity challenges. We want to really focus, again, as I said, on solutions, but also on partnership. How could we do it better? Knowing the challenges, knowing that nobody can do it alone, how could we, as scientific community, come together and have that critical mass that I talked about? We have critical mass in CGIAR, but there is also areas where we don't have critical mass, or even if we have it, we need more from our partners. And that's why I mention always our 3,000 partner institutions. They're not individual institutions. So how could we work together in a better way to really have the breakthroughs we need to completely revamp and change the way we are doing agriculture or food, land, and water system management? And the third one for me, it's a call for action to realign food, land, and water system for a sustainable future. So we keep talking about sustainability, and I think we have to define it better. But what we need to do also is create an environment for the farmers to move to that sustainable food, land, and water systems. And the only way to do it is to have a just transition. Energy did it, and it worked super well because they were well organized. They took advantage of the discussion around climate, and they got the just transition in energy. Government, policymakers, investors, they all support it. We need the same thing for agriculture to make a big hit and to really have a big change towards sustainable agri-food systems.
So the people coming to Nairobi that are gathering this global moment, what do you hope people will take away from being together? What's your one takeaway that you're really hopeful for that people will really come away from this with?
I hope really that people goes away thinking we can make it. We can make it together. We can change the food, land, and water system together. And I think really that's the one I want people go with a hope, saying that it's possible, but it requires a very strong partnership to really scale the real world solutions. And I want them really to go with an urgency that the food and climate crisis demand action now. And that's the solution is in the science. And we need all to put hand in hand, work together to make it happen. So I think really these two areas will be very crucial for me. And I hope we're going to give them an appetite to join us in the delivery of the research portfolio over 6 years. So partnership, I think, in all of this is important. And every one of us brings what they can do, and we put it together. And so it's about really partnership, excitement to work with us in the portfolio, but also an urgency flavor to it. So people do not put it on the side. They say, no, we need to work on it. We need to make it happen. So I hope that will be, but I think there will be a lot of showcase of what science can do. And I hope really some investors as well will be shouldering us to make sure that those breakthroughs make it to the hand of the farmers by the hand.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you because international development budgets are shrinking at the moment and there's a lot of competition for funding and that's getting tight. So some of the things you've talked to me about, what you're trying to do, efficiencies and working together and building all of this is really critical at the moment because there's less resource with a bigger problem or a bigger challenge. And that urgency is critical. So what would be your one message around the importance of really funding agricultural research at a time like this, like right in the moment we're in where things are getting tougher? I kind of feel like it's almost a moment that we should be actually putting more energy into funding agricultural research so that we can accelerate, become more efficient. But what do you think?
I couldn't agree more with you, Paul. I think really we have to shift. And that's what I think the donor community should understand it more than anybody else. We need to shift from crisis response to prevention. So if we want to prevent malnutrition, if we want to really not only cut on the 350 million we have in extreme hunger, but really completely eradicate it and make sure it doesn't happen in the future, we need to invest more in science. I think science can deliver solutions. And right now, unfortunately, most of the countries are way below 3% of their GDP in science all across. And if you look at agriculture per se, agriculture is receiving less than 7% of all ODA. we need to shift if we want to really prevent, if we want to have a setup that will help us better in the future. We need to invest more and invest more in agriculture at large, definitely, but also in the science behind agriculture. There is also very interesting studies that shows that the cost of inaction, it's much more higher. So there was a study that shows that in only 4 years, the numbers moved from $12 billion to about $25 billion per year. So the numbers are the number of inaction, and I think really we need to talk more about it. There are different studies that talks about different numbers, but really, if the call, whatever the number is, one of the numbers says that we need about 33 to 50 billion more annually to achieve SDG 2 by 2030, including 14 billion from ODA. So the cost of inaction of that, it's more than a double, if not 3 or 4 5 times. So I think really we need to understand that prevention is far better, and prevention, it's doable. The way we did it in certain diseases, but diseases, it's simple. You get a cure and you do it. Food security, nutrition security, it's much more broader. Environmental protection, biodiversity conservation, those are concepts that are much more complex. And unless we gear toward really using the science and using the best science to find those solutions, but also we scale them up. And scaling up, we are not good at it. And that's why I'm very excited that in this new portfolio, we have a Scaling for Impact program. And we need to crack it. We need to understand why scaling has been so difficult. And in my mind, we need to follow the private sector model. They are so good at scaling, but we need to put them in massively to help us really see those solutions that will prevent malnutrition, that will prevent degradation of natural resources, and that will prevent also food insecurity that we have in the world right now.
So one thing I always like to close off interviews with is a bit of a recurring question that often we can all relate to. It's around what you like to eat. What are you enjoying eating? You're a scientist, but what does a scientist who's at the cutting edge of agricultural research, what are you enjoying eating when you get the chance?
As a Moroccan citizen, I'm also Canadian, but I was born and raised in Morocco. I love Moroccan food. And if you know Moroccan food,
it's amazing.
Thank you, Paul. But what's really the first criteria in Moroccan food is diversification. It's almost you could eat for so many days that every day it's a different dish. So in Morocco, 2 point for me is that we eat a lot of vegetables. And that's why the tagine, it's a little piece of meat in the middle, but the rest of it is all vegetables. Or any plate, for a couscous, for example, it's 7 vegetables we have and a small piece of meat. So it's really both diversification and lots of vegetable. But I have to say, I'm a big fan of bread. That's one thing I can't take away from my plates. I love also bread, but also I love fruit. So by the end, it's a number of things around many cuisines. The other cuisine that I love very much is the Peruvian cuisine. And it's a lot of fish and a lot of really fusion, Japanese, Peruvian fusion cuisine. So for me, it's diversification. I could almost pass months without repeating the same thing.
I love it. And that's so important. And I think that's a great note to end on, because diversification is the future of our planet, and protecting that and improving that in our diet is going to help in our agricultural system. So great to hear. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We're super excited about Nairobi and CGIAR Science Week, and it'll be great to catch up, and looking forward to hearing all of the amazing work that's going on around the CGIAR and all of the innovation that's really exciting and brings hope.
Thank you so much, Paul, and see you in Nairobi. And I hope I'll see many people in Nairobi, because it's going to be a celebration of science and how that science could help us in the crisis world that we are right now. Thank you so much, Paul.
You've been listening to Future Fork, a show that explores the world of food and the decisions we can make today that will shape our future. Future Fork is produced by Disruptive Consulting Solutions and supports the SDG2 Advocacy Hub. For more info, head to the website futureforkpodcast.com. This show was produced with strategy and production support from Wavelength Creative. So you don't miss an episode of Future Fork, make sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm Paul Newnham, and I'll see you in the next episode.